Lynch. I was with the state police for 23 years. At the time of this investigation, I was a lieutenant assigned as the officer in charge of the state police major crimes unit as well as the violent fugitive unit. You do absolutely see people at their worst, unfortunately, but incredibly rewarding, and the time in those units went by incredibly fast. Back in 1999. It's a holiday weekend.
You ready for your game today?
And my son at the time was 12 years old.
Oh, hold on.
And I was at his Little League baseball game and got the call as to what was starting to evolve down in Little Compton.
Ah, shoot. I gotta go, sweetheart.
As head of the major crimes unit, when you get the call, you go.
Go get him, buddy.
Bye, Dad.
When we got there, we gathered our personnel and started to make our list, if you will, of how we're going to attack this case.
Stephen Lynch is the commander of the Major Case Squad of the Rhode Island State Police. He is the quarterback of the team. He is in command of a group of detectives, and they descend on the village of Little Compton to determine the nature of this case.
Detective.
Lieutenant, sorry to ruin your weekend.
There is a detective on this police department, only one. His name is Sid Wardell.
Come on in.
I was a patrol officer working detectives for the town of Little Compton, Rhode Island. In 1999, the Little Compton Police Department consisted of 9 officers. This was certainly beyond our capabilities as an agency.
There hasn't been a homicide in Little Compton since the 1960s. There's probably no one on the police department that's ever seen a homicide. So they want to get involved with the Rhode Island State Police.
We did a walkthrough of the scene, certainly taking note at that time that the house had been under construction and the victim was on the second floor of her residence.
What do we know so far?
The body was found in the bathtub, but first, take a look in here.
What I recall is the tremendous amount of blood evidence in the bedroom.
Some of the things that are going through your mind, was this something accidental? Did she fall and cause injury to herself and then ends up in the tub?
So what are we thinking? Head injury?
Most likely, but check this out.
One thing that really jumped out to me was the bed linens were gone.
It was quite clear to me at that point that something had gone wrong here, and it wasn't by her own hand.
So the action takes place in the bedroom, the result takes place in the bathroom.
We don't know anything about this lady at this point, so we don't know when this happened, how long she had been in the bathtub. Did she come home and find somebody breaking into her house?
Take a look at this.
There was a lot of things in that house that were of value.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a robbery.
There was no theft. There was $500 left in her wallet, in her bedroom. All her jewelry was still there. There was no obvious motive here.
What do we got in here?
Upon going through the scene, the victim had been removed from the bathtub.
This scene was very unique. The fact that where she was found within a bathtub, a hairdryer in the tub of water with her body.
So I think some natural instinct is that this was accidental. Is somebody being electrocuted?
Whoa. Definitely not an accident.
It was abundantly clear that she had sustained tremendous blunt force trauma. That what happened to her was nothing you would ever want anyone to have to go through.
This was a vicious, brutal crime. The injuries on the victim made her unrecognizable. One of her friends that worked on the rescue service, she told us, I can't even tell you if that's her. That's how brutal the injuries were.
You kill someone, you put them in a bathtub, and you throw in a dryer, hoping the police believe accidental electrocution. What sort of pig did this?
Lieutenant, the victim's sons are waiting outside.
Speaking with the family, you have to weigh what you're able to disclose at that point in the investigation, with the understanding that these are two sons looking for answers as to what happened to their mom.
Would you mind telling me a little bit about your mother?
She was a wonderful person.
We wanted to know what was going on in her life at the time as far as relationships. We needed to get as much background on the victim as possible.
Lynch is informed that the victim is Angela Spence Shaw, an immigrant from Great Britain who came with her then husband to live in the United States. Her first husband passed away. She remarried, and her second husband also passed away. So she came to live in the village of Little Compton as a widow and to work in a garden shop.
She was a nice woman within that community who gave of herself, working at a greenhouse, that she had a kind of a low-profile lifestyle there in Little Compton.
It just doesn't make any sense.
She was extremely close with her children. She was just a beloved mother and grandmother.
I have no idea who would do this to her.
She has no habits that would produce danger in her world. So the question becomes obvious in everyone's mind. How did Angela come to be in this bathtub?
We're going to find out whoever did this to your mother. I can promise you that.
I felt a responsibility to get this solved. I think that family deserved, and Angela Spence Shaw deserved answers.
Hey guys, check this out. We got a few early findings.
We were getting results back from the medical examiner's office that alerted us to the fact that she was raped and that semen was found within her body.
During the autopsy, it is critical to determine if there is suspected foreign material in the vaginal vault of the victim because it appears to be sexual assault. In 1999, DNA analysis, although in the beginning stages, was available. It was introduced in the United States in 1990. So it's 9 years since it's been around. And it has a great impact already that will grow to even greater impact as the science advanced. But in 1999, it was sufficient to identify someone uniquely from everyone on Earth. So it's critical during the autopsy that if there is seminal fluid present, that it's recovered and properly preserved. Rhode Island State Police are well aware of that, and they see to it during the autopsy that that is accomplished.
That adds a whole nother element into the investigation.
The fact that there was sexual assault that came into play, that certainly made us then begin concentrating on anybody that would have been a sexual offender in the area.
This could be our guy.
And they remarkably find one, Patrick Zimmerman, who lives in the area.
Zimmerman. Let's go pick him up.
Yeah.
Well now, Mr. Zimmerman, what were you up to the other evening, and how do you explain yourself? Let's go ask him.
Early Sunday morning, 66-year-old Angela Spence Shaw is found murdered in her home, a horrific crime that stunned and frightened residents of the quiet, normally peaceful town of Little Compton. State and Little Compton police launch a massive search for her killer.
One guy's been discovered that's a little edgy.
Zimmerman. This could be our guy.
Patrick Zimmerman. He's a violent sex offender. His history says so. He fits.
Afternoon. Are you Mr. Zimmerman?
Yeah, what's going on?
Do sex offenders repeat their crimes? Yeah, they do. Absolutely, they do.
We'd like to ask you some questions about Angela Spence Shaw.
What if he notices the neighbor lady? What if he notices that nobody's ever around but her? Is it an opportunity? Of course it is.
Look, guys, my wife's about to get home, and I really don't want to explain to her why the cops are here.
You're still trying to be respectful of individuals and not bring unnecessary light onto their past.
So then you wouldn't mind coming down to the station for a quick blood sample then?
You're asking someone to provide a blood sample to eliminate themselves from a crime.
A blood sample?
And how does that compare to the DNA profile of the semen found in Angela Spence Shaw?
It's a very common thing in my own experience to encounter people who have concealed their past from a family they met and produced after they got out of prison. They don't want that family to know that they ever were in prison or that they ever had a past like that. They've spent their life concealing it from people, and now it comes back to haunt them. They can't wait to make the police go away to prevent the discovery of their past.
Yeah, okay. Whatever it takes.
Zimmerman is the picture of cooperation.
I don't want to be tied to this. I'll give you my blood sample. I'll account for my activities at the time in question when this attack took place.
They take a blood sample for subsequent comparison. Blood sample is no match. So he was a promising lead to begin with, but it's not him.
A mother, a grandmother, her face barely recognizable.
The word spread quickly. There was a very somber feeling in the town, kind of this cloud that hung over it. The last homicide had been almost 40 years.
This is a very quiet, low-key community. It's an affluent community. Something like this just does not happen there.
The Rhode Island State Police are faced with the same problem homicide detectives all over the world are faced with. You have little or nothing to go on.
The clock is ticking.
You've got to take what you've got and get creative with it.
Yeah, I got something.
What you got?
What about the only other guy in town who's committed a murder?
Just throwing it on the table, we have this individual.
Who's that?
Stanley Gendreau.
That committed the only other murder in Little Compton, and his family lives almost right across the street from the victim's house.
Stanley Gendreau. He's out of custody these days, served a great deal of time in prison for the initial murder. So he inquires, what happened to this other murder that happened in 1965?
All right, thank you.
Stanley Gendreau, there was an infatuation that he had with this babysitter. He staked out the house, he had been watching through the windows. He talked about going for a ride. And when she ultimately had refused to go with him...
I got my car right here.
No, thank you. I'm good.
He picked up a rock, actually hit her over the head, and ended up murdering her.
He smashed a girl's head in with a rock. Really? Violent attack, female victim. Fast forward to 1999, a violent attack, female victim.
That was certainly information to digest, to take a look at.
All right, then. Let's go have a chat with Stanley.
Stanley killed once. Does that mean he can kill again? Of course it does. Let's go see Stanley and see what he has to say.
How's it going, sir? We're looking for your son, Stanley.
He's not here.
Upon speaking to the parents, we actually learned that Mr. Gendro had been in town just a few days earlier.
I'm not sure when he'll be back.
It raised suspicion because we weren't able to find him.
Well, if you hear anything, then let us know.
Sure.
Could this individual who committed that murder come back to town and have done it again?
Could have fled up north into Boston.
Or down towards New York. Either way, it's going to be tough to find.
Full autopsy report just came in.
The medical examiner's report came back. Blunt force trauma and drowning was ultimately determined to be the cause. She had also been electrocuted.
Once we had a clear picture from the ME's office, unfortunately, I think the attack on her was savage-like, is the best way that I could put that.
Jesus.
Her major organs are ruptured. No one can punch that hard, even someone in a blind rage. But they can jump up and down on the body and create that kind of damage, snapping ribs and crushing the liver and crushing the lungs. This is an attack of someone who's become an animal for those few moments.
This by far was the most brutal and heinous crime that I've ever seen. This was an evil individual.
We got to move on this.
Whoever did this is incredibly dangerous. Incredibly so.
Yeah, get me through to violent fugitives, will you?
We brought violent fugitive detectives into this case. Members assigned to that unit get very good at tracking people who don't want to be tracked.
They have to find him right away because he's going to do this again.
Stanley Gendro. We were unable to locate him originally for a couple of days, but there were two other detectives that ended up locating him, and, he had gotten word that we were looking for him.
Have a seat.
Here we have Stanley. Stanley killed once. Does it mean he killed this woman? No, but it means he could have.
How's it going, Stanley?
Having committed the murder in '65,
Glad you could make it down.
I gotta say that the odds were pretty high that this individual had something to do with this murder as well.
I didn't know you were looking for me.
This was somebody we needed to look very closely at.
There's an old expression, what does a killer look like? Well, the killer looks like you and me. They don't wear a sign that says I'm a killer. They are all potential killers because they're humans.
Where were you the night of the murder?
Home, reading a book.
Is it a romance novel, Stanley?
Now, those policemen are not going to accept an explanation, and they tell him that.
Look, I came down as a courtesy. You've got the wrong guy.
But he absolutely maintains that he has learned his lesson.
I'll give you guys whatever you need.
He comes across as believable.
All right. Let's go.
They polygraph him, they blood sample him, and the result of that is, it's not him. He's not the guy.
The person had nothing to do with this crime. It's a roller coaster ride. We're moving in a very interesting direction, only to learn that we're moving the wrong way.
If you've run out of suspect, the best thing to do is to start over. And where does this begin? Back at the crime scene. What did we not see? What was here that's significant?
Whoa. Check this out.
We knew the house was under construction.
But one thing that we didn't know was that they were in the process then of breaking through a wall to connect the addition to the existing home.
It wasn't secured by any type of lock. So that was a vulnerability that happened at the house that was unique.
Think our killer could have entered here?
This brought a lot of new suspects to this investigation.
Anyone who worked there or anyone who passed by when the work was being done would know that this house is vulnerable, and so is the resident. It vastly expands the possibilities. And Lynch doesn't like that, nor would I.
Whoa.
Stephen Lynch is very distraught when he realizes something he hadn't seen before. He discovers that a door has been removed in the process of this construction, and the opening is only covered by a tarp. Anyone who knows this has an entryway into this home involving no effort and no evidence of break-in.
We were going to have to drill down on anybody that had been on that property, that had any knowledge or had ever worked on that property.
All right, fellas, bring it in.
We were going to have a very detailed conversation with those folks involved.
Here's the plan.
We conducted a really thorough sweep of all the residences that were adjacent to hers.
We're gonna find out what happened. Bandit, I want you to run up that hill. You talk to that neighbor first.
Copy that.
At the time, I was in the major crimes unit, but we were kind of split into two groups. And Lieutenant Lynch, he pulled me and the other folks doing that type of work into this investigation.
Talked to some of the neighbors, got the construction crew information, and it was a local construction crew who had been working at the property for about 3 months.
This crew consists of 30 people. Okay. Better than 300, certainly better than 3,000. And we have 30 possibilities here. So let's get to work.
Those were people we wanted to talk to right away.
So 2 of the people on the list are the people that actually cut this hole in the wall. Does that make them uniquely more suspicious than the others? No. But if you're picking someone to talk to first, let's pick the guys that made the hole in the wall. And they are Kevin Moore and Jeremy Matika.
Moore and Motika were work colleagues, and they knew each other. We spoke with Kevin at length.
Kevin's story is straightforward. Explains he was with his girlfriend the night in question. They check out the alibi, it works. So Kevin's out. Now the next focus is Mr. Matika.
I was assigned to go find Jeremy Matika.
They determine he lives in Fall River, Massachusetts, just across the state line. So they go visit him.
Appreciate you talking to me, Jeremy.
Yeah, sure thing.
There was nothing about him that stood out. He almost looked angelic, very innocent, blonde hair, blue eyes.
There were no injuries that I could see that would, raise any suspicions. Just an average, contractor. I wasn't forming any impressions, just trying to figure out where was he on the night of May 29th.
Well, I was at work till about 3:30.
Matika says he went home from work that day and started drinking with the teenagers next door, continued drinking all evening with them. Then he went to bed.
He may have been 21, 22 years old, so if he's with 18, 19-year-olds drinking beer and drinking rum, it sounds like he's being honest about it if he's acknowledging something that, he knows he may get in trouble for.
The next morning I went up and visited.
The next day, he said he went to visit his girlfriend who was spending some time in Cape Cod.
Okay. Thank you, Jeremy.
Sure thing.
We'll be in touch.
He was pretty specific about his alibi. And for us, there was good things that he put timelines on that we certainly knew we could check on later.
Thanks for coming in such short notice.
When we spoke to Motika's girlfriend,
Can you tell us about where Jeremy was?
she corroborated Jeremy's story that he had been drinking beer and drinking rum to about 1 a.m.
Or at least that's what he told me when I saw him the next day.
At some time around 8 or 9 a.m., he decided to get up and drive out to where his girlfriend was on the Cape.
He seemed really hungover.
He kept throwing up, and he spent most of the day in bed. Well, now, he didn't mention that to us. What's he up to here?
That's when we started doing more follow-up.
Thanks for coming in.
They do a background on Jeremy Motika. He has a criminal record. He was arrested for kidnapping and assaulting a woman in Massachusetts. A history of violence toward women. This case is extreme violence toward women. That's a clue in the murder business.
It was not to the level of this savage attack, but it was certainly of note as to Motika's history.
Jeremy is rising above his 29 fellow workers as the guy that's the most interesting so far. Jeremy is a candidate for this.
As you talk to somebody, they'll say one thing, and then maybe the next time they'll give you additional information. So we did go back and talk to him to try and corroborate what he was saying.
So help me clarify a few things. You said you left work around 3:30 p.m. Where'd you go from there?
The second time, he told me some information that he hadn't previously. And he said he had stopped at a bar on the way home.
And what bar was that?
I don't remember the name.
He says he ordered a pizza that night.
Yeah, I got a pizza.
And the local shop should know that, again trying to provide himself with an alibi.
You sit tight.
Trying to get out of him the things that we could track down and verify whether that was what happened.
They check with the pizza shop. Jeremy's truthful. He ordered a pizza, but it was the night before the homicide.
Stopped to get some beer on my way home.
Every time somebody speaks to Jeremy, Jeremy's got different things to say. Are the inconsistencies significant? No, but they are inconsistencies. And that's where it begins. People lie for a reason.
By all accounts, Motika left work at 3:30.
We were able to corroborate that he was at the neighbors next door drinking from 6 p.m. until at least midnight.
That's where things get fuzzy.
And then that's it. We don't have any other idea of where he was after that.
So that was certainly a factor in this.
He ultimately has no account for the hours between midnight and 9 a.m. That's a very long time. An adequate amount of time for him to do what was done to Angela.
Detective Teller.
Hey, Detective, this is Kevin. We talked a few days ago.
Jeremy Motika has a co-worker named Kevin Moore, who the police have already talked to and already eliminated.
Thought I'd just give you a call.
What's going on?
Yeah, Jeremy's been acting weird the past.
He calls me to tell me that Jeremy was acting suspicious, just different while on the job.
Okay, like what? He's just been saying some things that don't really make a lot of sense.
It's because my prior arrest. He's trying to pin this on me.
Jeremy was telling Kevin police were trying to pin this crime on him because of his prior criminal record.
They're out to get me.
And he was very agitated and very distressed.
I wouldn't touch it. Come on, think.
It's reasonable to think that somebody might be anxious that now we've spoken to them twice about a homicide.
Well, I mean, they interviewed all of us.
Kevin says to Jeremy, well, don't worry about it. You were never upstairs in this house, so there can't be anything up there from you. And Jeremy once again gets excited and agitated.
Now, they're saying my fingerprints will be in her bathroom because I use it sometime.
You did?
Yeah, man, I gotta go to the bathroom sometime. Sue me.
Kevin thought that was interesting.
He knew that what Motika was saying was inconsistent in his recollection of their work on the property while they were there with Angela Spence Shaw.
But then something even more interesting took place.
See them looking at shoe prints?
They are still going to work at the crime scene every day. Jeremy sees a box from the Rhode Island State Police, and it says shoe impressions on the box.
How many people have the same shoe prints, man? No.
Later in the day, Kevin overheard Jeremy on the phone talking to his girlfriend, instructing her in a very agitated way to take his work boots up to Cape Cod.
Wanting to get his shoes as far away from that scene as possible, to me, speaks to trying to get rid of evidence involved in this case.
Appreciate you coming forward with this, Kevin. What's on Kevin's mind?
Kevin believed this whole conversation was out of the ordinary, and to him, it was in some ways alarming.
It certainly was helpful that Kevin was now supplying this information of his own suspicious concerns regarding what Motika was trying to say, how he was trying to account for himself.
Now, we bring in his girlfriend.
This place in Fall River and take them.
She tells us about the shoes that he asked her to remove from their apartment in Fall River and bring them to the Cape Cod residence where her parents lived.
Why would he do that?
I have no idea.
The next question is, have you ever done this in the past?
Never.
And she thought it was highly suspicious.
Thanks for the heads up.
In my mind, as an experienced homicide detective, Jeremy's become more than someone of interest. Jeremy's the guy. It's him. He knows it's him, and he's afraid we're figuring out that it's him. Now we got to figure out how to prove it.
We knew that there was that one element of evidence that he could never walk away from, and that's his DNA profile, being in our victim.
We had no probable cause to get a warrant for their blood. The best we could do is ask for their consent.
The next witness statement will be dated June 9th, 1999.
We requested the DNA sample from Jeremy Motika.
My name is Jeremy Motika, October 10th, 1975.
He was quite willing to provide evidence that he had nothing to do with this.
Mr. Motika, prior to signing a release for hospital blood, were you advised of your constitutional rights? Yes.
Jeremy thought that that blood was to match blood left at the scene. He had no idea that we found semen. So this guy did not have a care in the world. He was cool as a cucumber.
And you understand the reason that you are providing a blood sample to the Rhode Island State Police, is that correct? Correct. And you're doing so on your own free will? Correct.
In the United States, you are innocent until you are proven guilty. However, the true test will be match or no match. If the specialized lab cannot match it to Jeremy Motika, Jeremy walks away. And this investigation has gone up in a puff of smoke. All of this effort, all of this work is designed to satisfy one fact. Who took Angela Spence Shaw's life? Who savagely beat her to death and raped her at age 66?
My name is Jeremy Motika.
We believe it's probably Jeremy Motika. But the DNA sampling will tell us the answer to that question.
So we got a solid alibi for Zimmerman, solid alibi for Gendreau.
Lieutenant Lynch?
We get the result of the DNA sample taken from Jeremy Motika. There is an absolute DNA match with what was found in our victim.
Are you sure?
They came up with a number that it was no one but Jeremy Motika. He's the individual that is responsible for this homicide, no doubt about it. That was a moment of satisfaction. That was a moment of relief.
He's gonna get his ass.
We were taking Jeremy Motika off the street.
Jeremy is arrested and charged with first-degree murder and first-degree sexual assault. He's interrogated after an advisement of his rights.
You got your DNA at the crime scene.
His accountability for why his semen would be associated with this investigation is that he engaged in sexual intercourse with his girlfriend at times before he came into work, and that he would use Angela Spence Shaw's bathtub to wash himself off.
You don't understand.
And therefore, that's how his DNA sample got into the victim, because she then took a bath after he used the bathtub. What? Earth to Jeremy. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, and I've heard a lot of dumb things.
Why don't you just tell us what happened? Get it off your conscience.
I mean, he's a sociopath.
I had nothing to do with this, and you know it.
Reaching for any kind of excuse or grasping at straws to try and save his ass, you know.
You fabricated these results.
He's not going to admit anything.
I didn't do it.
Because, after all, he didn't do anything. He's innocent.
I had nothing to do with this, and you know it. You're trying to pin this on me.
Well, all right then.
Good luck with that.
Go to jail, Jeremy. Do not pass go. Do not collect $100. Just go to jail and stay there until you die.
Unfortunately, Jeremy Motika doesn't have the conscience to say why he did what he did. And what he did were unspeakable acts towards a woman in her mid-60s, a grandmother.
Jeremy meets this woman. He knows she lives alone. He's there every day. What does that add up to in his mind? Victim. Someone who can be overcome. Someone who can be used to satisfy his needs if that moment comes.
Motika has done work at the property that day. He then goes on, engages in drinking alcohol. And for whatever reason, makes a decision to drive into Little Compton and onto Angela Spence Shaw's property.
He had to drive about 20 minutes from Fall River, Mass. And know that there was coordination on his part to do this. That's a whole nother level of sickness.
He enters that home because he knows he can. He attacks this woman. She's 66 years old. He doesn't care about that. He beats her unmercifully in the face. He rapes her. He jumps up and down on her like she's a bed cushion. He's satisfying some need within him to punish a woman. And he selected her to do that with. What made him do that? I don't know.
I have no idea of what that sociopathic mind can justify in those moments.
Then he drags her and throws her in a bathtub.
The whole point of him putting her in that tub was to wash away the semen.
He was trying to clean up as best he possibly could what he had done.
He wants the police to believe it's an accident. by throwing an appliance into the water when it's plugged in and running, causing electrocution to occur.
Those are decisions that Jeremy Motika made in taking Angela Spence Shaw's life without any ounce of remorse as to what he did to Angela.
Jeremy Motika goes to Cape Cod the next day, but he throws up, he's sick. The vomiting is from exposing himself to what he knows he can be. He can be Dr. Jekyll, but he can certainly be Mr. Hyde.
Did this man, Jeremy Motika, kill and rape 66-year-old Angela Spence Shaw? That is the question jurors must try to answer.
On an early morning hour, Sunday, May 30th, you get in your car, ride down Little Compton on Conic Point Road, enter the property of Angela Spence Shaw.
No.
Certain of that?
Positive.
On the stand, in his own defense, Motika told jurors that he felt state police were trying to pin the murder on him.
I was just some guy doing carpentry work. That's all.
Despite the fact that he doesn't want to own up to his responsibilities, I felt very confident that Jeremy Motika would be found and held accountable for what he did to Angela Spence Shaw.
Jury finds the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree. Count 2, the jury also finds the defendant guilty of first-degree sexual assault.
They convict him and send him away forever.
He received a life without parole sentence, because that was what I believe, personally, was the appropriate and just sentence for this case.
The most frustrating thing was not being able to hear those words come out of his mouth.
Jeremy Motika is a sociopath. As a sociopath, you have no human emotions. You don't feel love or guilt or compassion or sympathy or empathy. You are not capable of those emotions. The only thing you understand is rage.
You know, I learned a long time ago of trying not to totally interpret the acts of sociopathic criminals. The justification for it lies with them. The only gratifying look back at this is that we were able to provide those sons with an answer.
Sitting with the family in court, it broke my heart. It was quite emotional, but it brought us great satisfaction that we removed this dangerous predator from the street because he was just getting started.
Stephen Lynch is a quarterback of a professional team of homicide investigators. The game is what they do. Jeremy was not going to escape, and Jeremy didn't.
Night pushed against the windows like a held breath. Sydney in winter. Damp brick, sodium lamps, the harbor bridge a steel spine in the distance, humming without sound. A girl in a red windbreaker cut down a laneway that smelled of rain and cigarettes. Her name, Lena Ward, 20. Art student, sketchbook always in the crook of her arm. She waved to the kebab man on the corner of Enmore Road. He lifted a hand, grease on his wrist, radio hissing footy scores. Time, 10:42 p.m., a Thursday, June 17th, 1993. She was 2 blocks from home, 2 blocks from vanishing. Ask anyone who knew her and they give you the same 3 words. Bright, stubborn, kind. Ask the city and it gives you 100 other words. Missing, mysterious, cold case. Headlines that don't fade. Polaroids turning silver and soft. A face dissolving into chemistry and memory. But for now, rewind the tape. Listen to the rain. Feel the lane pinch narrow. Brick squeezing brick. A trickle of water running along the gutter and swallowing the moon. A car idles once, twice, then stops. A door clicks. A voice offers help, directions, anything to make you pause. There's a sound that could be a laugh or a hand over a mouth. Hold there, freeze frame. We never see the grab. We see its edges. We see the kebab man wipe the counter, glance up too late. We see a neighbor's TV flicker blue behind lace curtains. We see a stray cat jump a bin and streak into clapped out shadows. The air buckles and resets. Somewhere a phone rings. Somewhere a mother wakes for no reason and can't say why. By morning, the city is a machine grinding forward. Fairy horns, paper boys, Timber trucks chugging past sandstone buildings, still half asleep. Lena doesn't text back, because no one texts in 1993. She doesn't call. Her roommate, Rhea, rolls out of bed in a band tee and sticks her head into Lena's room. Sheets neat. Red windbreaker gone. Sketchbook gone. Shoes gone. Not unusual. Not yet. She waits. Noon slips by. The phone on the hallway table stays stubborn and quiet. Rhea looks again, finds a coffee cup with yesterday's crescent of milk at the bottom, a smear of charcoal on the windowsill, a half-drawn tendril of hair in the corner of a page that lies open like a mouth. Late afternoon, the city changes its face. It goes gray. Low clouds press the skyline, flattening everything into one careful shade. Rhea calls Lena's mother in Tari. She's probably at the studio, the mother says, but her voice is already wavering, riding a tremor she'll later describe as the beginning of the end of the world. By evening, police, not flashing lights, not blaring sirens. 2 uniforms and a clipboard. They ask the questions they have to ask. Last seen, what she wore, who she loved, who she feared. The answers spill, then snag. News travels like smoke. Before midnight, a radio station reads the description. 20, 5'6", brown hair and a loose plait. Red windbreaker, last seen near Enmore Road. Listeners lean in over kitchen tables, metal spoons suspended in thickening soup. A trucker blinks at kilometer markers on the Hume, puts an X in memory next to the word red. In Newtown, posters go up in the rain. Each sheet flaps and sticks, paper skin on brick. Eyes stare from a photocopy. They don't blink. The kebab man keeps replaying the same sliver of night. A car, a door, the hitch in his own breath he didn't understand, and a radio voice saying goal, and the word sits like lead in his throat because he didn't move. Days stack. The search widens. Creeks are walked. Drains stared down like throats to another world. Backyards negotiated with apologetic smiles. Dogs sniff along fences, tails drawing question marks in cold air. The city learns new vocabulary, grid search, canvassing, trace. Detectives in cheap ties and cheaper coffee cluster around a map with flags planted like regrets. A borrowed helicopter writes circles over Merrickville and Tempe. It finds rooftops, washing lines, a child waving up at the sound as if it could come down and lift her from boredom. It does not find Lena. Witnesses bloom then wither. A bus driver thinks he saw her at 1110 near King Street, but his shift was long and faces blur. A woman swears she heard a cry behind the old picture theater, but it might have been Fox's. A man in a leather jacket is seen twice that week near the lane. He becomes a figure, tall, dark, maybe a mustache, and then a myth. The file grows, tabs multiply. Someone writes no result in a margin in a hand too neat for what that means, and in the quiet between bursts of police chatter, the cold begins. Not the weather, the kind of cold that settles into a case and doesn't thaw for decades. There's always a house. In this story, it stands 3 streets away, pale paint flaking like old sunburn, a jacaranda bruising the gutter with purple bells, curtains barely closed, a porch that remembers cigarettes at midnight, a garage that smells of petrol and the metallic nick of fear. Neighbors think they know the man inside. Courier, or mechanic, or something to do with tools. They see him early, see him late, see him carry boxes with labels turned to the wall. He nods. He keeps to himself. Later, their memories will change shape to fit the headlines. Back at the station, the lead detective learns the rhythm of disappointment. An anonymous call. A bag lifted from a drain that holds nothing, as if emptiness had weight. A smear that might be blood and is tomato sauce. A red thread caught on a rusted bolt miles from anywhere. Rumors fatten. Theories harden. A boyfriend is pulled apart under fluorescent lights and then set down again, trembling, empty of what they hope to find. The roommate sits for hours rubbing her sleeve between finger and thumb, the fabric going shiny with love and dread. Time does its quiet work. It sands the edges off voices. It lets weddings happen without her. It lets babies be born who will grow up knowing the name Lena Ward before they learn their own phone numbers. The posters bleach to ghost gray and then nothing, but the file doesn't die. It calcifies. A young constable moves to a different desk, then a different station, then leaves the job. A senior detective retires and keeps a photocopy of Lena's face in the back of a kitchen drawer, under the warranties and the spare keys, because some things you don't throw out even when you should. And then, because stories circle back even when we don't want them to, because cities remember with their bones something moves, not resolution, not yet. A new technology arrives with a clean, buzzing sound. Databases grip hands across borders that used to be polite lines on maps. Old evidence is hauled from a shelf that smells like paper and dust and the inside of a violin case. There's a windbreaker. It isn't red anymore. There are fibers. They're stubborn and ordinary and worth everything. There's a hair sealed in a plastic sleeve like a museum exhibit. The lab hums. Machines learn to read whispers they once ignored. But before that burst of modern light, another kind of spark. A voice on a podcast. That's decades later, of course, but the city doesn't know time the way we do. It stacks nights on top of nights. It keeps footsteps in the hollows of lanes like rain. Years from now, a journalist with a voice that could sell you lies or truths in equal measure will say her name into the dark, and tens of thousands of ears will lean in. But we aren't there. We're here in 1993 with a mother who sets a place at the table for a week and then stops, and a father who starts taking the long road home past the art school because he can, because maybe he'll see a flash of red and the world will uncrack. Headlines march and fade. Art student missing. Mystery deepens. Cold case. No leads in Newtown disappearance. Community in shock. Strange clues emerge. The city keeps breathing. The jacaranda goes bare, then purple again. The house with the peeling paint hums at night in a way you could call a fridge or a generator or your own nerves. The garage door sometimes vibrates though there's no wind. A neighbor starts to write down license plates on a pad meant for shopping lists. It feels ridiculous. It feels necessary. He fills 3 pages with the numbers that come and go. He tears them off and throws them away. He wishes he hadn't. Inside the station, a box of index cards becomes a monitor screen, becomes a database searchable with a keystroke. A new detective opens the file and the room seems to tilt, as if the past were heavier on one side. He isn't from here. He doesn't know the kebab man, the jacaranda, the way Newtown can feel like a village inside a city that won't make eye contact. He knows procedure. He knows what cold feels like. He knows that sometimes if you turn a page slowly enough, it changes what's written there. He reads everything, twice. He notices the sketchbook and the scene list. He notices the list of pencils, HB, 2B, 4B, as if darkness can be measured. He sees that the red windbreaker had a torn pocket repaired with gray thread. Gray, not red. That sticks. That matters later. Rain again. A volunteer searcher finds a button and scrub near the canal behind a tangle of lantana that grips ankles and leaves green tattoos on hands. The button doesn't match anything they have on record. It goes into a plastic bag anyway. 2 decades later, someone will say that button taught the city how to pray for small things. For now, it's another speck on a long table. Another shard of a mirror that shows nothing until it shows everything. If this were a simple story, we would find a body. We don't. We find echoes. Echoes in a pension application filled out with shaky letters. Echoes in a traffic stop where a driver's hand trembles for half a second when asked for license and registration. Echoes in the way a piece of tape curls back from cardboard as if trying to speak. The detectives learn the art of listening to cardboard, to tape, to the space where all the noise isn't. Do you feel the city holding its breath? Do you feel that lane still narrow, still wet, still waiting for someone to name it without flinching? Jump then. The calendar spins. The harbor bridge grows another lick of paint. The kebab shop changes hands and then changes back. Rhea moves north, marries, keeps a box she can't open. The mother in Tari lines up shoes along her skirting board like beads and can't explain why. The father stops taking long roads. He stops taking any roads at all. The file gathers a sigh. And then the door you didn't know was there opens. Not with a crack. With a soft sound like paper being lifted. A forensic tech in a room you can smell across time. Ethanol, latex, the faint sweetness of old envelopes. Calibrates a machine that can see in one hair what 100 eyes missed. She doesn't know the kebab man, the jacaranda, the house, the lane. She knows ratios, temperatures, chains of custody. She knows patience. She slots in a tiny tube with a sample pulled from the inside seam of a pocket repaired with gray thread. She presses start. The machine answers in numbers. Numbers that map to a person like stars map to a constellation you can't unsee once you see it. A name arrives. Quietly, it arrives the way thunder arrives when you've already seen the lightning and counted 1,000 to 1,000. It arrives not as a shout but as an address, a date of birth, a list of minor offenses that looked like nothing until they didn't. It arrives attached to a garage with a humming door. It arrives attached to that house with the peeling paint. It arrives with a history of night work and odd hours and boxes carried with labels turned to the wall. It arrives, and the city feels the temperature change by a degree that is everything. But hold the cuffs, hold the knock at midnight, hold the words you want to hear a detective say on your television with the sound turned up too loud. Here's what you get instead. A breath drawn in. A plan built quietly. A map drawn over a map. You get the picture of a red windbreaker in a lab report. You get footsteps headed back into the lane, not to the night we lost her, but to the day something finally turns toward light, and you get this voice in your ear saying, listen, because after 29 winters, the city is about to thaw. The name that surfaced wasn't shouted, it was written, typed in black against white, tucked in a folder no one outside the room was supposed to see. But in stories like this, names have a gravity. They bend everything around them. He was called Stephen Grady, 51 now. Back then in 1993, he was 20, same as Lena. Lived 3 streets away in that pale house with the jacaranda spilling purple against the gutter. A courier who never stayed in one job, who patched cars in the garage at night, who drifted in and out of temp work with excuses that sounded thin even when he rehearsed them. He was the kind of man who was there without being noticed, who stood in crowds without catching eyes, who left parties before anyone realized he'd arrived. Police in 1993 never looked at him twice. He didn't stand out. He didn't stand anywhere. Until the gray thread pocket of a windbreaker, sealed for decades, whispered his DNA. Rewind. Back to that street in 93, the Jacaranda house. Neighbors said he smiled once, maybe twice. They remembered the hum of the garage door. They remembered headlights sliding in and out at late hours, a soft cough of engines starting and stopping, a cough they told themselves was ordinary. They remembered moving away eventually, selling up, never asking themselves why their chest tightened when they thought of that garage. He was a ghost standing right in front of them. And when Lena disappeared, he didn't leave. He stayed. The house swallowed him, the city blurred him, and 29 years later, science painted his face on the file. Arrest imminent, the words that trigger a city's pulse to skip. But this story isn't only a man and a name. It's about the silence that followed Lena's disappearance, a silence so heavy it pressed into every home in Newtown. Parents walked children to school instead of letting them ride bikes. Locks doubled, chains added, dogs bought, eyes flicked over shoulders at footsteps that meant nothing but felt like everything. Headlines read cold case, mystery deepens, community shocked. Yet the shock never ended. It became the air, heavy, metallic, almost sweet, like the smell of rust on rain. Detectives trailed tips that went nowhere. A man in Queensland claimed to have seen her hitchhiking. False. A caller whispered about bones near the old quarry. Animal remains. A psychic mailed in sketches that looked like television static. Into the bin. Files stacked higher, dust softening the corners. The years ticked. Lena's parents aged. Her roommate Rhea learned to live with an absence that sat at the table like another person. She'd catch herself setting out 2 mugs in the morning, muscle memory crueler than grief. On anniversaries, strangers left flowers near Enmore Road. Not family, not friends, strangers. Because the story didn't belong to one household anymore. It belonged to the city, a city that hated mysteries it couldn't solve. Still, life pressed forward, relentless. Kids grew, streets changed. The kebab shop repainted, went out of business, reopened under a new name. The lane where Lena vanished filled with murals, bright birds, fractured letters, as if paint could seal a wound. Tourists snapped photos there, unaware they were standing in the artery of a nightmare. The house with the jacaranda kept peeling. Its paint flaked like scabs. Grady kept his head down. And police? They waited for technology to catch up. They didn't know they were waiting, but that's what it was. Waiting for machines that could hear whispers trapped in fabric, for databases that could match a hair to a man who thought he'd long escaped. Flash forward. 2 detectives 29 years later sit in front of a monitor glowing faint blue. The lab report scrolls line by line. Hit confirmed. DNA from the windbreaker pocket cross-matches with Stephen Grady. Known address, the Jacaranda house. Known history. Minor assaults, petty theft, 2 DUIs. Never charged with violence beyond bruises on strangers he claimed had provoked him, but the match is clean. Probability numbers stretch into the trillions. The detective exhales, and the sound is like a stone dropping in deep water. They know what comes next. Surveillance, interviews, paperwork stacked like sandbags before a storm. And finally, cuffs. They whisper to each other. Sydney, 1993. Cold case solved. But solved is never the right word. Not when a girl never came home. Community reaction spreads like fire. Radio breaks the news first. After nearly 3 decades, an arrest has been made in the mysterious disappearance of art student Lena Ward. Listeners freeze. Forks clatter against plates. Drivers pull over, headlights flooding the median strip. Shock doesn't cover it. Relief, fear, anger, all braided together. Because a ghost has been given flesh, and that flesh was living among them for 30 years, walking their streets, buying their groceries, breathing their air. One headline screams, "Cold case solved, community in shock." Another whispers, "Neighbor charged." The shock isn't that police found him. The shock is that he was there all along. But don't move too fast. Even now there are gaps, unanswered questions, pieces of the story that slip through fingers. Where is Lena? Did Grady bury her, burn her, hide her in plain sight? Police dig. Crews pull up concrete near his garage. Ground-penetrating radar sweeps yards. Dogs whimper at certain corners, noses frantic, but nothing definitive. Not yet. It's the cruelest twist of all. An arrest without a body. A community left clutching absence, dressed up as closure. And in the dark, the lane still waits, wet brick and gutter, whispering the same question it whispered in 1993, what really happened that night. The case bleeds into headlines worldwide. Decades-old mystery finally breaks open. DNA cracks Sydney cold case. People who never met Lena, who weren't alive in 1993, share her photo, eyes fixed in photocopy grayscale. It's not just news, it's myth-breaking, history cracking open, a city facing its own reflection and asking how long it can live beside silence before it suffocates. And every story, every interview, every broadcast circles back to the same sentence. She was just 2 blocks from home. 2 blocks, that's the distance that haunts Sydney still. 2 blocks between laughter and absence, between life and myth, between a sketchbook and a file marked cold case. 2 blocks that stretched into 30 years. And now, with a name in hand, the city realizes those blocks are still there. They always were. They never moved. And neither did the question carved into the rain. Where is Lena Ward? The cuffs close with a sound that should feel final, metallic certainty in a world of questions. But it doesn't. Stephen Grady doesn't thrash, doesn't fight. He lowers his head as if the moment had been rehearsed, as if he'd always known the lane outside his peeling house would one day fill with flashing red and blue. Neighbors lean on fences, arms folded, mouths half open. Some gasp, some whisper, some just stare. All these years, one says, voice breaking, he was right here. Police guide him into the back of a car, his shoulders slumped, his face turned away. A jacaranda branch scatters purple flowers across the bonnet. Cameras click. The image makes front pages before dawn. Cold case breakthrough, neighbor arrested. Beneath it, smaller type, Sydney in shock. Inside the station, the interview room waits like a stage. A table bolted to the floor, a camera's red eye blinking steady, a plastic water bottle placed in front of him, condensation dripping onto paper notes. Detectives watch through glass. They know what he can't ignore. The DNA match is undeniable. A thread tied around his throat. They press record. Questions slice the air. Where were you that night? Did you know Lena? Did you offer her a ride? Did you follow her into the lane? His answers come flat, almost bored. Don't know her. Didn't see her. Wasn't there. He shrugs, drinks water, shifts in his chair. The detectives don't raise voices. They don't need to. The science speaks louder than any denial. Still, he holds on to silence like a shield. Word spreads fast. By morning, the street outside the Jacaranda house is lined with news vans, cables snaking over the pavement. Reporters speak into microphones, voices pitched high, urgent. A stunning development tonight in one of Sydney's most haunting mysteries. After 29 years, police have arrested 51-year-old Stephen Grady in connection with the 1993 disappearance of art student Lena Ward. Neighbors appear on camera, faces blurred by rain on lenses, saying the same thing over and over. He was quiet, kept to himself, never thought he could. The sentence never finishes. Fear and hindsight slice it apart. Meanwhile, Lena's mother in Taree hears the news from a reporter before police reach her door. She clutches the phone so hard her knuckles whiten. For a moment she can't breathe. Relief crashes against grief, against the raw wound of 30 years unanswered. Do they know where she is? She asks, voice trembling. The reporter stammers, no, not yet. The line clicks silent. She sits down heavily, the chair groaning under her, staring at the place on the wall where Lena's photo hangs. Frame faded, glass cracked. She whispers to it, a plea and a prayer in one. Come home. Back in Sydney, investigators scour the house. Every drawer, every floorboard, every scrap of fabric, boxes pulled from the garage, tape peeled back with gloved fingers, dust rising like ghosts disturbed. They lift a mattress, tear apart insulation, scan the backyard with radar. Dogs sniff and circle, noses pressing at spots where soil feels wrong. Neighbors crane necks over fences, eyes wide, hearts pounding. The air around the house hums with tension, a city leaning in to watch the secret unfold. Yet nothing definitive surfaces. No body, no bones, just fragments. A button that could be hers, threads that could be from her windbreaker. Evidence enough to tie him close, but not enough to draw a line to the one truth everyone wants. Where is she? The courtroom becomes the next stage. Grady enters in handcuffs, flanked by guards, cameras flashing like a storm. The gallery packed with journalists, strangers, survivors of other cases who come to see justice in progress. He keeps his head down, jaw tight, expression unreadable. The charge is read. Abduction and suspected murder of Lena Ward. A hush falls. The words land heavy, echoing against walls, etching themselves into headlines before ink even hits paper. He pleads not guilty. Gasps ripple through the gallery. Outside, chants rise, justice for Lena. Posters with her face lifted high, decades-old photocopies now glowing under television lights. But a trial is a slow machine. Lawyers argue, motions filed, hearings delayed, evidence lined up, contested, debated, the DNA, the fibers, the threads, the radar scans. The defense calls it circumstantial, the prosecution calls it undeniable. The city waits, breath held. Meanwhile, the lane where she vanished becomes a shrine again, flowers laid at the bricks, candles flickering against spray-painted wings. Strangers pause, bow heads, whisper her name. Cold case solved, the headlines repeat, but the community knows better. Solved means answers, solved means remains, solved means closure, and closure hasn't arrived. In the quiet, the questions roar. Did he act alone? Did someone help him? Were there others? Detectives comb old files, chasing whispers long ignored. A bus driver, long retired, insists again he saw her at 11:10, climbing into a car he can't describe. A neighbor swears she heard a scream. A man in a leather jacket is remembered again, reshaped by rumor into shadow. Each story adds weight, but none tip the scale to truth. The city sits restless, pacing its own streets. Night falls, and Sydney looks the same. Ferries glide, neon buzzes, lanes fill with music. But beneath it all, the unease persists. Parents still hold children tighter. Strangers glance over shoulders, because even with an arrest, the ghost of 1993 hasn't gone. It lingers in the rain-slick bricks of that lane, in the hum of the jacaranda house, in the silence of a girl who never made it home. A ghost that asks one relentless question: what really happened on that cold June night? And as detectives lock files for the day, as reporters file stories, as neighbors close blinds against the cameras outside, the question hangs heavier than ever. They caught him, they named him, but Lena is still missing. And in that absence, the city itself becomes the witness that cannot forget. The trial looms like a storm over the city, dates set, then shifted, hearings announced, then delayed, each movement dragging the community through another cycle of hope and exhaustion. Outside the courthouse, reporters shout questions into microphones, their words sharp, jagged. Where is Lena? Why now? What evidence? The answers never come clean. Officials stick to phrases like ongoing investigation, significant development, pending trial. But behind those words, people whisper something darker, that 30 years of silence may still end in silence. Inside the courtroom, the air is thick, restless, the gallery full, benches creaking under the weight of bodies leaning forward, waiting. Mothers with daughters her age when she vanished. Old neighbors who remember the posters, strangers who never knew Lena but feel they do. Her sketchbook is displayed as evidence, pages curling at the edges, charcoal lines faded but still alive. A lock of her hair sealed in plastic, a photograph of the red windbreaker bleached pale by time. Objects turned into witnesses, each one speaking louder than the man in the dock. Grady sits motionless, face pale under fluorescent light. He doesn't look at the gallery, doesn't look at the family, doesn't look at the evidence laid out in front of him. His lawyer calls him cooperative, misunderstood, a victim of a system desperate for someone to blame. The prosecution counters with the science, the DNA match from the pocket seam, the fibers, the tiny button pulled from scrubland that may have been hers. The jury listens, eyes narrowing, hands folded, some scribbling notes as though answers might fall between ink lines. Yet no matter how hard they look, the body is still missing, the final piece still gone. Outside, the lane where Lena disappeared is no longer just a stretch of wet brick and spray paint, it's a site of pilgrimage. People leave drawings, sketches in charcoal as if speaking her language, as if calling her back with the same tools she loved. Candles line the walls, wax spilling like tears. At night, the flame light flickers against murals, birds and faces and broken words, and the lane looks like a chapel carved from the city itself. Strangers whisper her name as if she can hear them, as if the lane still holds her voice in its damp, echoing throat. The city is split. Some call the case solved, point to the arrest, the science, the evidence, and say this is enough. Others say no, not until she is found, not until her parents can bury her, not until the lane gives up the secret it has held for 3 decades. Solved, they argue, is a word for files, not for hearts. And in the quiet between headlines, the unease keeps spreading like fog rolling low through narrow streets. The investigation widens, detectives pulling at threads left untouched for years. They search again along the canal, pushing through lantana thickets where time has buried old evidence. They dig near quarries long closed, concrete cracked, weeds rising through steel. They tear into garages, lift floorboards, scan fields with radar. Dogs circle, noses twitching, tails stiff. Every time the city holds its breath, every time the result is the same. Nothing. No remains, no bones, only fragments, scraps of a life that ended without a trace. A ghost in red that still refuses to be found. In Tari, Lena's mother wakes at night to the phone, convinced it will ring with news. It never does. She lights a candle by her daughter's photo and waits for dawn. Rhea, the roommate, watches from afar, her life pulled in other directions but never free of that night. She scrolls through headlines on her phone, fingers trembling, eyes watering when she sees the same photocopied photo she once taped to every pole in Newtown. She whispers into her empty kitchen, "They've got him, Lena. They've finally got him." But her voice breaks before the sentence ends. Sydney learns again what it means to live with an open wound. Talkback radio blares with callers arguing about justice, about closure, about what it means to solve a case. News tickers flash updates, each headline carrying the same words: cold case, arrest, DNA. Supermarkets hum with the conversation, neighbors trade theories over fences, strangers lean closer on buses to dissect every detail. The city is obsessed because the story is more than a crime. It's a mirror held up to itself, a reminder that shadows live on their streets, that silence can last decades, that safety is fragile and temporary. Back in the courtroom, prosecutors paint the picture of June 17, 1993. Lena walking home, rain on bricks, a car door clicking open, a voice offering help. The defense tears at every edge, questioning witnesses who have grown old, memories that have grown blurry, police who admit mistakes in the early hours of the case. The jury shifts in their seats, weighing science against silence, certainty against doubt. In the gallery, the city, the world waits, trapped between the thrill of a breakthrough and the agony of what's still missing. When the day ends, when the lights dim, when the cameras shut off, the Jacaranda house stands alone, its paint peeling, its garage door humming in memory. The flowers fall purple and soft, covering the driveway like a shroud. Neighbors close their blinds tighter, but they still glance out. The street doesn't forget. The lane doesn't forget. The city doesn't forget. And in the silence, the absence of Lena Ward is louder than any verdict, any headline, any arrest. Because even as the case tightens around Stephen Grady, even as evidence piles, even as headlines scream cold case solved, Sydney knows the truth. A mystery isn't solved until the ghost is at rest, and Lena Ward is still out there, somewhere between rain and shadow, between memory and myth, between the lane where she vanished and the city that still waits for her return. The courtroom swells with noise before every session, the scrape of benches, the shuffle of papers, the low thrum of whispered speculation. But when Stephen Grady is led in, the air cuts to silence. His presence fills the space with something heavier than flesh, heavier than bone. The weight of decades of suspicion turned into certainty by one hair, one thread, one match too precise to ignore. He lowers himself into the chair, chains clinking, jaw clenched. Behind glass, journalists ready their pens, cameras fixed, headlines already forming. Cold case killer faces justice. The prosecution stands, their words fast, clipped, each syllable like a nail hammered into wood. They speak of the windbreaker pocket, the gray thread, the DNA locked inside it for 30 years. They speak of the fibers, the button, the garage, the late-night movements no one could explain. They draw a map of Newtown in 1993, a city bleeding neon, the lane slick with rain, the girl in the red jacket just 2 blocks from safety. They lead the jury step by step, stitch by stitch, until the picture is too vivid to ignore. Grady's lawyer rises. Calm, deliberate, rehearsed. He calls the evidence weak, circumstantial, built on science that can be twisted, databases that can be wrong. He paints Lena's disappearance as tragedy without proof of murder, a mystery twisted to fit a suspect the city demanded after years of failure. He points at the man in the dock and says words designed to seed doubt. Quiet neighbor, ordinary worker, no body, no crime. The gallery bristles, whispers cutting through the silence, but the jury stays stone-faced. Witnesses take the stand. The kebab man, older now, hands shaking as he recalls that night. The idling car, the door click, the voice he didn't place until it was too late. He admits he's replayed it for 30 years, every breath a mistake. Rhea testifies, voice trembling, about the empty bed, the coffee cup with milk still at the bottom, the sketchbook lying open like a wound. Her words crack the room, bring tears to faces that never knew Lena, remind the jury this isn't science alone, it's a life stolen. Yet the defense fights back, memory fades, they argue, time distorts, witnesses remember what they want to remember. The bus driver who swore he saw Lena on King Street is brought in, confused, his account unraveling under cross-examination. The leather jacket man, the scream behind the picture theater, all pulled apart until they look like shadows instead of facts. The defense plants seeds of uncertainty and waters them with doubt. But DNA does not forget. The scientists testify, graphs and numbers projected on cold screens, explaining how probability climbs into numbers so large they no longer feel real. Trillions to 1. A match stronger than memory, stronger than alibis, a match that points straight at the man with his hands folded, his eyes down, his silence unbroken. Outside, Sydney is electric. News vans stack 2 deep satellite dishes bristling like weapons. Protesters chant, candles burn, murals multiply. Every night the lane glows with flickering light, strangers gathering as if the act of standing there together might drag Lena's ghost closer to home. Radio callers debate through the night, some demanding a guilty verdict, others whispering conspiracy, wondering if the true killer still walks free. The city fractures along fault lines of belief, but in every voice there is the same undertone: fear, awe, anger. Inside, the prosecution sharpens its blade. They play a recording. A police interview from years ago when Grady was first questioned and dismissed. His answers then, too casual, too quick, not pressed because the technology wasn't ready. Now those same words, played to the jury, drip with new meaning. Never seen her. Don't know her. Wasn't there. 3 lies that echo against 30 years of silence. The tension builds day by day. Jurors shift, notebooks thick with scribbles. Family members clasp hands, knuckles white, every breath a prayer. Grady sits unmoving, the only sound the faint scrape of his chains against the floor. His stillness is a defiance, a refusal to bend, a mask carved from stone. Some call it arrogance, others guilt. Either way, it makes the air colder every time he enters the room. And always the question hovers above every testimony, every exhibit, every cross-examination. Where is Lena? No one answers. Not the prosecution, not the defense, not the man accused. The courtroom trembles with it. A ghost in every shadow, a presence heavier than the judge's gavel. As the session ends one evening, rain lashes the courthouse steps. Reporters rush to their vans, umbrellas snapping, a candle left on the pavement, gutters and dyes, wax pooling like blood. The lane back in Newtown shines wet, brick glistening, spray-painted wings dripping color into darkness. The city sleeps uneasily, restless, waiting for a verdict it fears will not heal. Because even if a jury says guilty, even if a sentence is handed down, even if Stephen Grady spends the rest of his life behind bars, the truth remains jagged. No body, no grave, no closure, just a name on headlines, a face fading in photocopies in a city haunted by 2 blocks of rain-slick brick. And in that space between justice and absence, Sydney asks itself the same question it has asked for 30 years. What really happened that night in 1993? The trial grinds forward, relentless. Every day another stone dropped into the well of the city's memory. Reporters file in, jurors sit straighter, and Stephen Grady remains the one still point in a room charged with noise. He doesn't blink under the lights, doesn't flinch when the prosecution paints him as the man who pulled Lena Ward into the dark. His silence is unnerving, a mask that refuses to slip. Yet beneath the surface, cracks begin to show, small and fleeting, the twitch of a jaw. The way his fingers drum once against the table before he forces them still. Psychologists testify, voices calm, clinical. They dissect patterns of behavior, talk about control, isolation, men who live double lives inside quiet houses. They reference old charges, bruises explained away, neighbors unsettled by the hum of a garage door at midnight. The defense objects, calls it character assassination, irrelevant. The judge overrules. The jury listens. The weight of history presses down. And then for the first time, Grady speaks. On the stand, voice low, deliberate, eyes fixed on the wood grain of the witness box, he repeats the same denials. I didn't know her. I wasn't there. You've got it wrong. His lawyer nods, satisfied. But under cross-examination, the questions tighten. Where were you the night Lena vanished? Why did fibers from your home appear on her jacket? Why does the DNA point only to you? His answers stumble, pause too long, strain at the edges of his mask. The courtroom leans in. The gallery holds breath. For a moment, just a flicker, it feels like he might crack, but then the mask slams back into place. You can't prove anything, he says, steady again, and the words echo like a dare. Outside, the crowd swells larger every day, placards held high, justice for Lena, candles lit until the steps of the courthouse glow. People whisper that the lane in Newtown feels different now, heavier, as though the bricks themselves know the truth is close. Strangers gather in silence, standing shoulder to shoulder in the drizzle, their breath clouding the air like smoke. Some swear they hear footsteps echoing behind them even when the lane is empty. Some swear the murals shift at night, wings bending closer to the shadows. The prosecution sharpens its final blow, the science. They bring the forensic tech who unlock the DNA, a woman with steady hands and a voice that doesn't shake. She explains ratios, probabilities, the unbroken chain of custody, the impossibility of mistake. Numbers spill like thunder. 1 in 5.8 trillion. No other match, no escape. The jury writes faster. Grady stares straight ahead, expression carved from stone. But doubt still lingers, thin and poisonous. No body, no crime scene, no confession. The defense clings to that void, repeats it until it becomes a drumbeat. No body, no murder. They suggest Lena might have run away, started over, vanished by choice. The gallery gasps, some weeping, others enraged. Her mother grips the rail until her knuckles whiten, shaking her head. Rhea sobs openly, whispering, she would never. The judge bangs the gavel, but the poison has already entered the air. And so the trial becomes more than law, more than science. It becomes a question of belief. Do you believe the numbers? Do you believe the silence? Do you believe the ghost of Lena Ward still walks the lane, pointing at the man in the dock? The city convulses. Radio stations run 24-hour coverage. Callers screaming, pleading, demanding. Headlines throb with words like verdict close, final days, community braced. Strangers light candles, not just in Sydney, but in other cities, other countries. Her face shared online, grainy photocopy reborn as digital vigil. Back in the courtroom, closing arguments cut like razors. The prosecution paints Lena's final steps. The rain, the lane, the car door, the voice. They point at Grady, their words sharp, final. He was there. He took her. The science proves it. 30 years of silence end here. The defense counters, calm, methodical. The science is not the story. Without a body, there is no crime. Without proof of death, there is only doubt. The jury listens, faces blank, carrying the weight of a city's hunger for justice. When court adjourns, the gallery empties slow, heavy. Outside, the crowd chants, candles flare, news cameras burn light into the night. And above it all, the city waits, restless, haunted, braced for the gavel that will decide if 3 decades of silence finally fracture into something like justice, or collapse back into doubt. Because the truth is this, verdict or not, guilty or free, Lena Ward is still missing. The lane still whispers, the city still aches. And justice without a body is a door only half open, a shadow that keeps moving even when you shine the brightest light. The jury files out, 12 figures moving in silence, the weight of 3 decades pressing across their shoulders. The door closes behind them with a soft click, but the sound feels seismic, like the city itself has been locked in that room with them. Deliberations begin. Outside, the courthouse steps erupt into a frenzy of speculation. Reporters shouting into cameras, bystanders craning necks, candles trembling in the night wind. Headlines refresh by the hour. Jury begins deliberations in Sydney cold case. Community braces for verdict. The city holds its breath. Inside the jury room, words fall sharp, heavy. Some lean on the science, on the DNA, on the probability so astronomical it leaves no space for chance. Others hesitate, haunted by the gap. No body, no grave, no final proof of death. They pace, argue, circle back. Hours pass, then days. Food trays come and go, notes pile, voices grow hoarse, and still the question repeats, do you believe the science or the silence? In the gallery, Lena's family waits. Her mother sits rigid, a photo of her daughter clasped in her hands, thumb tracing the edges of the frame until the skin reddens. Rhea stares at the courtroom floor, eyes glassy, lips moving in silent prayer. The city crowds outside with posters, placards, chants rising in waves. Justice for Lena, justice for Lena. The chant bleeds through the courthouse walls, a constant pulse under the hush of waiting. Stephen Grady is held in a cell below, the walls sweating with damp, the light buzzing overhead. He lies on the cot, hands behind his head, face turned to the ceiling. Guards watch, stone-faced, but even they feel the tension, the tremor in the air. Grady doesn't speak, he doesn't ask. He just waits, as if he already knows which way the scale will tip. And the city begins to fracture. Talkback radio flares with rage. Guilty, he has to be guilty. What more do they need? Others murmur unease. Without a body, can we really know? What if we're wrong? Social media floods with her face. Candles burning in living rooms miles from Sydney. Voices shouting across distance. We remember, we demand, we wait. Back in the jury room, a breakthrough comes late at night. A single sentence spoken with quiet finality. If not him, then who? Silence follows. No one answers, because there is no one else. No other name, no other shadow. Just the man in the jacaranda house, the garage door humming, the DNA sealed inside a seam of gray thread. One by one, heads nod. Agreement takes shape, slow but unstoppable. When they file back into the courtroom, the room is electric, the gallery leaning forward, reporters poised, pens trembling. The judge asks the question. The foreperson stands, voice steady but eyes betraying the weight of the moment. Words spill, sharp, irreversible. We find the defendant, Stephen Grady, guilty. The air breaks, gasps, sobs, shouts. Lena's mother clutches the photo to her chest, eyes squeezed shut, tears streaking down her face. Rhea covers her mouth with both hands, body shaking. The gallery erupts, some crying out in relief, others pounding the benches as if the verdict itself is too fragile to hold. Outside, the crowd surges, chants twisting into cheers, into sobs, into the roar of a city that has waited 30 years for this sound. And Grady? He doesn't flinch. He stands, face blank, chains rattling as guards grip his arms. No shout, no outburst, no confession. Just silence, the same silence he's carried for 3 decades. He's led away, swallowed by the system, by walls and locks, in a sentence that will stretch longer than the years he thought he'd gotten away with. But even as the gavel falls, even as the headlines scream, cold case solved, guilty verdict shocks Sydney, the ghost remains. Lena is still missing. No grave, no body, no place to lay flowers that will not be washed away by rain. The lane still whispers at night, damp brick and dripping paint, an open wound the verdict cannot stitch closed. Sydney celebrates and mourns in the same breath, relief tangled with grief, justice shadowed by absence, and as candles burn through the night, as strangers sing her name into the dark, the question lingers heavier than ever. Where is Lena Ward? Because guilty is not the same as found. The verdict rolls across Sydney like thunder, shaking walls, rattling windows, leaving echoes in every corner of the city. Guilty. A word that should taste final, but doesn't. Crowds flood the courthouse steps, chanting Lena's name through tears, candles raised high, posters of her face held like banners in a war that finally saw a battle won. Cameras flash, microphones thrust forward, headlines spread faster than the wind. Sydney 1993 cold case solved, guilty verdict stuns nation. But in the hush that follows, another truth presses down. Lena Ward is still missing. No grave, no body, no place to leave flowers that will not wash away with the next rain. Justice, yes, but incomplete, jagged, half a victory carved into stone, the city celebrates and mourns in the same breath. Detectives move immediately. With the verdict secured, they double down on the search for her remains. Teams return to the Jacaranda house, the garage door humming faintly as if mocking them. Soil turned, floorboards lifted, every corner of earth and timber tested. Dogs sniff until their paws are raw, machines hum over ground that has grown stubborn with time. But the house yields no secrets, only silence, as though the years themselves have buried what Grady refuses to speak. Sydney watches every move. Helicopters hover over quarries, over scrublands, over canals tangled with weeds. Headlines scream with each new excavation. Police dig in remote site after tip. Bones found in field, not Lena's. The cycle repeats. Hope flares, hope dies, and through it all the ghost of Lena walks behind every headline, every spade of earth, every unanswered call. Her mother appears on television, voice steady but breaking at the edges. She thanks the detectives, thanks the jury, thanks the city for remembering. But her plea is sharper than gratitude. Find her, please. I need to bring her home. The words strike like lightning, silencing anchors, bringing viewers to tears in living rooms miles away. For 30 years, she carried silence. Now she carries a demand the whole nation hears. Grady sits in prison, walls thick, days measured by clanging doors. He doesn't speak, he doesn't confess. He eats, he sleeps, he stares at the ceiling as if the verdict was just another day he expected. Reporters speculate about appeals, about deals, about whether he might one day trade the location of Lena's body for leniency. But he offers nothing. Silence is his last weapon, and he wields it with chilling precision. The lane in Newtown becomes a shrine once more. Murals bloom higher on the walls, wings stretching, faces multiplying, charcoal sketches left at the base, candles dripping wax into pools that harden like scars. At night, the air hums with whispers, footsteps echo through the lane is empty. Some say it feels lighter now, the verdict lifting a shadow. Others swear it feels heavier, as though the truth is pressing harder against the bricks, demanding to be heard. And Sydney itself changes. Parents tell their children the story as warning. Don't walk alone, don't trust strangers, don't forget Lena Ward. Schools hold assemblies, communities gather. Survivors of other disappearances stand together in vigils that burn deep into the night. A city once numbed by silence finds its voice, demanding answers not just for Lena, but for every name on the long list of cold cases scattered across decades. Yet even as the city shouts, the absence whispers louder. Every headline celebrating justice is paired with another asking the same question. Where is she? The verdict gave Sydney a villain, but not a resolution, and the longer the search continues without finding her, the sharper that absence cuts. Night falls, and in living rooms across the city, televisions glow with her face, grainy photocopy, reborn again and again, her smile frozen, her eyes staring through time. Families sit in silence, some weeping, some staring, all haunted. Because justice without a body is like a sentence unfinished, a door half open, a truth caught in shadow. And so Sydney waits, restless. The Jacaranda house stands empty, its paint peeling, its flowers falling like drops of blood on cracked concrete. The lane in Newtown holds its candles, its murals, its whispers. The prison holds its silent man, and the city holds a single unbroken question that no verdict can erase. What really happened to Lena Ward on that night in 1993? Weeks slip into months, but the name Lena Ward refuses to fade. Even after the verdict, after the cameras pack up, after the reporters move on to fresher scandals, her face lingers on walls, in vigils, in whispers between strangers. Sydney doesn't forget. It can't. Because justice without her body feels like a sentence cut short, a book missing its final page. The Jacaranda house stands empty, windows boarded, door sealed, paint peeling into flakes that scatter across the yard. Children ride past on bikes and glance quickly away, as though looking too long might let something out. Neighbors keep curtains drawn tighter, yet they still whisper over fences. How could he hide her so well? Did he bury her, burn her, scatter her? Did he keep her closer than anyone dared imagine? Every theory is a blade, and the city keeps cutting itself on the questions. Police continue the search. Teams dig at tip sites across New South Wales. Quarries overrun with weeds, scrublands choked with lantana, riverbanks swollen with rain. Bones are found, but none are hers. Each discovery raises hope, then smothers it. Detectives speak carefully at press conferences, phrases like credible lead and significant progress. But still, no Lena. 30 years of silence, and silence remains. Her mother speaks less now. Grief has stripped her voice raw. She thanks supporters, thanks officers, but when cameras switch off, she cradles the photo to her chest, whispering into the frame as though Lena can still hear her. Rhea lives quietly, avoiding interviews, but every June 17 she returns to the lane in Newtown, places fresh flowers at the bricks, and leaves before dawn. She doesn't want cameras, doesn't want questions. She wants her friend back, and that is the one thing the city cannot give. Sydney itself absorbs the story into its skin. Tours begin, guides pointing out the lane where she vanished, the house with the jacaranda tree. Tourists photograph the murals, unaware they are standing in a grave without a body. The case becomes folklore, a ghost tale whispered in pubs, a warning told to teenagers, don't walk alone. Remember Lena. The city wears her absence like a scar, visible, undeniable, shaping how people move, how they trust, how they breathe. In prison, Grady remains silent. Reporters send letters, advocates visit, officers listen for confessions in the dead hours of the night. Nothing. He lives in routine, rising, eating, staring at walls that will never release him. Some say he smiles when he hears her name on television. Others say he doesn't react at all. Silence is his last grip on control, and he clings to it like chains. The public grows restless again. The chants change from justice for Lena to find Lena. Billboards rise, petitions circulate, pressure mounts. Detectives reopen every corner of the file, scanning it under new light, chasing whispers from long-retired officers. A map of New South Wales blooms with red pins, each one another possible grave, another place to dig. Yet every excavation ends the same way, with nothing but dirt under fingernails, nothing but absence. And still the lane lives. Candles burn year-round now, wax crusting over brick, petals curling in rain, murals layer on murals, wings stretching wider, faces multiplying. At night, the lane hums with footsteps that aren't there, with whispers that aren't voices. Some say the city itself has claimed her, keeping her spirit close, refusing to release her until the truth is spoken. Sydney learns to live with the duality, justice in a courtroom, absence in the streets. The guilty verdict gave a villain, but it did not give peace. Parents still walk children to school, neighbors still glance at shadows, the city still twitches at the sound of footsteps behind them. Because a ghost doesn't vanish with a verdict, a ghost lingers until it is laid to rest. And Lena Ward remains a ghost. The city chants her name at vigils, sketches her face in charcoal, paints her smile in bright colors against brick. She is myth, memory, warning, prayer, and as each year passes, the question digs deeper, carving itself into Sydney's bones. Where is she? Where is Lena? Because guilty is not enough. Guilty is never enough when a girl walks 2 blocks from home and disappears into rain, and 30 years later the lane still whispers her name. Time keeps moving, but in Sydney, it feels as though the clock for Lena Ward never ticks forward. 30 years have passed, a guilty verdict has been spoken, and yet the city still lives in that rain-slick lane on a Thursday night in June 1993. Every anniversary reopens the wound. The news cycle revives her face. Candlelight vigils spark along Enmore Road, the same photocopied smile reprinted again and again, until it feels less like an image and more like a haunting. The lane itself has become holy ground. Murals tower higher each year, wings spread across bricks like guardians, eyes painted so vividly they follow every passerby. Tourists visit, snapping photos for their feeds, but locals know the weight beneath the paint. At night, candles flicker low, wax spilling into layers that crust and harden. Some swear they hear her footsteps, soft and quick, slipping just out of reach. Others claim the rain runs differently there, pooling in shapes that look like letters, like a name trying to write itself back into the world. Detectives keep searching, not always with shovels or dogs, but with files and databases, tips that trickle in from prisons, from drifters, from strangers who convince themselves they saw something long ago. Each lead is examined, each site tested, each rumor given weight, because after 30 years, no one dares ignore even the faintest whisper. Yet every effort ends the same way, an empty hole, a dead lead, a silence that seems to deepen rather than fade. And still, the city demands. Billboards glow with her face, petitions gather signatures, radio hosts speak her name with urgency that refuses to dim. Find Lena, the new chant, echoing in protests outside Parliament, in classrooms, in living rooms. The guilty verdict satisfied the law, but it did not satisfy the people. Sydney is not asking for punishment anymore. Sydney is asking for her. Her mother grows frail but unyielding. She appears less often on camera now, her voice softened by age but sharpened by grief. She speaks directly to the man who took her daughter. Tell us where she is. End this. He doesn't answer. He never does. The silence in his cell is as thick as the night he created, a silence that grips tighter with each year. And so Lena becomes something larger than victim, larger than case. She becomes Sydney's ghost, woven into its identity, whispered in every warning, etched into every cautionary tale. Her story is told to children not as history, but as instruction. Don't walk alone. Don't trust the quiet neighbor. Don't forget what silence can cost. Bars hum with theories. Universities study the case. Podcasts replay every detail as though repetition itself might reveal the missing piece. But the missing piece never comes. Night after night, the lane waits. It is always damp, always echoing, always holding its breath. People walk through and feel it in their bones. The sense of something unfinished, of a city still caught mid-scream. Some hurry, refusing to glance at the murals. Others linger, laying hands on the brick as if pressing against skin, whispering her name like prayer. Sydney is many things, loud, bright, relentless. But in this story it is also haunted. Haunted by 2 blocks of rain. Haunted by a girl with a sketchbook. Haunted by a verdict that locked away a man, but left the truth in shadow. And so the city carries her. In headlines, in murals, in whispers, in chants, always in chants. Justice for Lena, find Lena, remember Lena, words that bleed into the night, carried on the hum of traffic, on the salt air of the harbor, on the hush of rain sliding down brick. Because a guilty verdict closed the file, but it did not close the wound. And Sydney knows, as long as Lena Ward is missing, the story will never end. Dawn pours like milk over the harbor, soft and pale, smoothing edges, making the bridge look kinder than steel should. Ferries cut slow wakes through pewter water. The city yawns, stretches, pretends it can start fresh. But some mornings carry yesterday inside them, stitched under the skin. This is one of those. The radio breathes the same 4 words it has learned to say like a mantra, like an oath. Sydney, 1993, cold case solved. The announcer lets the sentence hang, then moves on to weather, to sport, to an ad for flooring that promises to outlast your life. The world is merciless like that. It keeps going. It asks you to come along. In Newtown, the lane glistens as if rinsed clean, but you know better. Candles gutter, their wicks shouldered with white ash. The murals feel closer, eyes varnished with humidity so they seem to weep. Someone has chalked a headline near the drain in letters a child could have drawn. Find Lena. The word find is smudged by a heel or a wing or the weather. The word Lena is perfect. The lane keeps it that way. Reporters have moved on mostly. Their vans have chased different storms, parked outside different houses, humming with secrets. But the people who never made the news still come. A nurse finishes a night shift and leaves a paper daisy. A bartender offloads a pocket full of change into the candle tin because giving weight to a shrine makes it harder to blow away. A man who once told police he heard a scream and wasn't believed lays his ear against the brick as if he might catch an echo 30 years late and finally be right. Rhea keeps her ritual. Early, before cameras, before murmurs, she arrives with flowers and charcoal. She sketches on the nearest patch of wall a single line. A braid arc, fast and sure, the kind of line she learned from watching Lena draw hair without looking at the page. The charcoal breaks. She keeps going with the stump. A woman walking her dog stops, watches, nods. No one speaks. Words feel heavy here, like coins you can't spend. Across town, a mother waters 3 geraniums, lined like red beacons on a windowsill. She speaks to them as if they understand, and maybe they do. She places her hand on Lena's framed photo and breathes, slow, measured, like a swimmer holding just enough air to turn at the wall. She has learned the math of endurance, which anniversaries will take her knees, which storms will leave, which nights bring dreams with sound, and which bring the kind that are only colors. She has outlived the man in the dock's power over her mornings. She has not outlived the question. She has decided she doesn't need to. Love can carry a question its entire life. Prison strips even silence of drama. A bell, a slot, a tray, an inventory of days. Stephen Grady files appeals. The machine of the law obliges with forms and stamps and dates. His name appears in tiny print on pages no one reads twice. In the yard, he keeps to the fence line, eyes on gravel. In the shower, he learns the geography of unspoken rules, the currency of quiet. The headlines never say it, but it's true. He is smaller now, not in height, in weather. He will never be as tall as the shadow the city made around him. He will never be as large as the gap he left. He has learned that a cell can be loud even when no one speaks. You can hear blame in fluorescent hum. You can hear a life you stole in the way your food tastes like nothing. Detectives age in clusters. The young become the middle, become the old, and the cold case unit is a family stitched together by the things it couldn't let die. There's a new agent with sharp eyes and kinder hands than she knows. She keeps a copy of the lab report pinned inside her locker, not as a trophy, but as a compass. A reminder that patient work can outlast arrogance. When the day sours, when a tip is a prank, when a dig yields a dog's grave, when a witness wants airtime more than truth, she reads the numbers again. 1 in 5.8 trillion. She remembers the seam of gray thread, the pocket's lip, the hair kept in plastic like a psalm. She closes the locker and goes back to the long work. They still search. Quietly, relentlessly, the city deserves undisguised verbs. Years don't erase a lane, they etch it deeper. A councilman proposes a plaque. A councilwoman says a plaque is too small. There is talk of a scholarship at the art school. A bench near the canal, painted red, then gray, then red again, to remember the windbreaker and the thread. A poet writes a line that sticks to bus shelters in vinyl letters. 2 blocks is the longest distance in this city. Teenagers kiss underneath it and pretend not to feel watched by the past. Teachers assign essays. A podcaster with a voice like late-night radio re-records the series with an epilogue that isn't an ending and calls that honesty. There is a night the sky opens. Not rain, something else, the kind of weather that makes the world sound closer. At the vigil, the candles are in jam jars, the photos laminated against dew. The crowd is smaller than the first years after the verdict, larger than the middle years when fatigue was a second language. A guitarist plays a song without words. The mother stands, not at the front, not at the back, exactly where she has learned to live, in the middle of people who understand. Rhea takes the microphone because someone has to talk and no one should have to. She doesn't give a speech, she gives a picture. She laughed with her whole face, she says, and the whole lane smiles without meaning to. She said hair is just light drawn slowly. She said rain makes a city honest. The guitarist nods like he's learned a new chord. A stranger cries the way you do when you've been waiting for permission. Sydney learns an adult truth. Closure isn't a door slamming, it's a window you stop checking at 3 a.m. and start opening in the morning just to let air in. The verdict closed the case for the courts. The city keeps the file open in its chest. People stop asking for miracles and start asking for maintenance. Keep the mural clean, keep the candles safe, keep the detectives funded, keep the memory unexploited, keep the story accurate in classrooms so the next generation knows the difference between myth and warning. Sydney is good at noise. It teaches itself a slower skill. Care. There is a rumor that never makes the news because it doesn't need to. A contractor renovating an old stormwater culvert finds a ring pressed into silt, a simple band with a scratch that could be random or could be an L. He hands it to police without posting a thing. He goes home and eats dinner and sleeps like a man who handed the night back to the people who hold it. The lab tests it. Metal doesn't give you DNA. Scratches don't give you certainty. The ring joins a small, solemn shelf labeled possible. A detective writes the word on a log with good black ink. She doesn't tell herself stories. She doesn't not tell them either. Time is a vandal and a healer. The jacaranda house is sold, then scraped, then lifted into the bland safety of a duplex painted the color of new appliances. A young family moves in with a trampoline in the yard. They hear the story in the cautious voices of neighbors and decide to live here anyway. Their daughter lines up stuffed animals along the fence and teaches them to whisper please and thank you to the lane. Memory doesn't give you deeds, it asks for neighbors. Sometimes at night, the harbor throws light back at the city like a dare. The bridge hums, trains thread the dark, sirens rise and fall and rise again. The lane is quieter, maybe because grief has learned breathwork, maybe because the city has. Wax hardens, then flakes off, layered like tree rings you could date. Flowers go from tight to blown to seeds that lift on a wind that smells like wet brick and distant salt. A moth beats itself senseless against the jam jar and exhausted rests. Someone lifts the lid. Freedom is the smallest, gentlest gesture in the book. You want an ending. Humans always do. A shovel hits bone. A letter arrives with a map. A prisoner breaks and tells a chaplain everything. A storm lifts a secret. A dog stops barking and digs instead. The city wakes to a headline that flickers like sunrise. Found. But the night teaches a different lesson. Sometimes justice is the thing that allows a community to carry what it cannot cure. Sometimes a solved case is a solved part. Sometimes the rest of the work is living together with a question and refusing to let it rot into superstition or spectacle. So listen, the voiceover lowers, not to whisper, but to bring you closer. This is the story. A girl in a red windbreaker, 2 blocks from home. A city that learned how long 2 blocks can be. A pocket seam that held a truth for 3 decades until numbers turned into handcuffs. A courtroom where a verdict stood up and spoke. A lane that became a chapel. A mother who chose breath. A friend who kept drawing. A city that refused to archive its heart. The case is solved, and it isn't. The file is closed, and it isn't. The door stays half open because love stands with its foot there and says, not yet. One last image. It's late. The candles are out because winds have rules too. The murals sleep, color dark as a held note. A thin sheen of water creeps along the gutter, finds the shallow slope, slides toward the drain. Sodium lamps give everything a second life. A figure crosses the mouth of the lane. A nurse, a bartender, a detective, a mother, a friend, a stranger. Any one of them, all of them. They pause, they listen. The city, which is so good at roaring, lets itself be quiet. Somewhere a jacaranda drops a final bell that nobody hears and everybody does. Headlines will always try to finish your stories for you. Here is the only one that matters tonight, printed where no paper can carry it, in the soft, stubborn ledger of a city's chest. Sydney, 1993, cold case solved. And the name we keep saying is how we keep her here. Sydney moves on, at least on the surface. Construction cranes swing above the skyline. Cafes fill with laughter. Trains rattle past murals nobody bothers to name anymore. But the story of Lena Ward does not leave. It lingers in quiet corners, waiting for moments when the city lets its guard down. A rainstorm on Enmore Road, the slam of a car door at night, the hum of a garage motor in the dark, ordinary sounds that send shivers through ordinary people because the city has taught them to hear ghosts. The jacaranda house is gone, replaced by duplexes painted pale, their windows gleaming, blinds sharp and new. The families inside live clean lives, their children bouncing on trampolines, their laughter tumbling over fences. Yet every spring, when the new jacaranda blooms, purple petals scatter onto the concrete, and neighbors swear the yard feels heavier, as if the ground still remembers. History doesn't vanish with bulldozers, it just hides under fresh paint. Detectives, even retired, cannot stop circling the case. Some wake at night thinking of maps, of quarries they never searched, of storm drains, too narrow for dogs but wide enough for absence. Files are boxed, digitized, archived, but the box always opens again. New eyes look at old paper. A young constable prints Lena's photo and pins it above her desk, not as assignment, but as reminder. The words written under it, don't forget, because forgetting is how cases go cold, and cold is how silence wins. The city keeps her alive. School children draw her face for class projects. University students debate the failures of the first investigation. Journalists replay grainy footage in anniversary specials, their voices heavy with the gravity of borrowed memory. Musicians write songs, lines that mention a red jacket, a lane, rain on brick. The chords echo in bars where no one needs context. Everyone already knows. Lena Ward has become more than victim. She has become myth. And myths do not fade. They shift. They adapt. They root themselves in the places people fear most. The lane is no longer just brick and paint. It's pilgrimage. Couples leave flowers. Teenagers dare each other to walk it at midnight, but they walk fast. Their laughter brittle. Artists chalk her name into gutters. Priests whisper her name into sermons. The lane is alive in ways brick should not be. Each year, more candles melt into the ground, layering wax like tree rings you could count to measure grief. And each year people whisper they hear her footsteps still, quick and light, 2 blocks from home. In prison, Stephen Grady grows older, smaller. Time strips arrogance, but not silence. Guards say he stares at walls for hours, lips moving without sound. Some believe he talks to himself. Others believe he talks to the ghost he made. He files appeals, loses them, files again. The system grinds on. He breathes. He waits. He dies a little every day in ways headlines do not care to print. He becomes less man, more absence in flesh. Yet the one truth he carries, the one place Lena lies, remains locked behind his teeth. Sydney holds vigils long after cameras leave. Mothers carry their children there, teaching them her name. Survivors of other crimes stand shoulder to shoulder, chanting, candles swaying. Strangers walk past and pause, some bowing their heads, others whispering without meaning to. The chant never changes. Find Lena, remember Lena. And in the stillness, the truth is sharp. Guilty is not enough. A verdict did not end this story. A prison sentence did not close it. Justice can punish, but it cannot resurrect, cannot return the body of a girl lost in rain, cannot answer the only question that matters. Where is she? Sydney has learned to live with that absence, not to erase it, not to silence it, but to carry it, heavy as stone, bright as flame. The story has become part of its bones, a scar carved deep into its identity. And maybe that is the only ending it can have. A city that refuses to forget, a lane that refuses to be ordinary, a name that refuses to fade. So when the rain falls at night, when the jacaranda scatters purple across pavement, when the hum of traffic dips low enough to sound like breath, listen closely. You will hear her story, not solved, not finished, but alive, because some ghosts never leave and some names never die. Lena Ward is one of them.